So hello everyone. Welcome back to my podcast, STAB, the Student Startup Lab, podcast hosted by me, Sasha Levsky. And today I'm here with a new guest, Simon Reinhard. So thank you, Simon, for being here. Thank you for doing this with me. Simon is a memory athlete, and so I think Simon, you could start by just introducing yourself to everyone so that people understand what do you do in life and who you are.
Thank you very much, Sasha. It's a great pleasure being here. And yeah, quickly about myself. I am a two times world memory champion. There are some tournaments where you memorize stuff. I have studied law and worked as a lawyer, and since about 10 years, I switched from that and I'm giving memory courses for all topics, for law, medicine, for what you can imagine, everything, chess, by the way, also. And yeah, maybe this might be of interest to your viewers and your audience.
Yes. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation and to do many different things. I think just a quick start, just to show a little bit what you can do, we can do a little memory test.
Sure. Okay. Let me share my screen. Here we are on the page. Then I would go to training.
What do you think is the most
I mean,
challenging?
I mean, words is very challenging. There are like 50 words in 1 minute. I cannot guarantee that I get all the 50. Maybe it's like 48 or something, or even fewer, but I think it's all that's for me the most fun. Yeah.
Okay,
And
let's do words.
maybe I'm not getting the full 50, but 1 minute is also not a lot of time. So let's see. You just check whether okay, I have German. Would it be okay if it's German words? If I have English words, then it might be even less.
Sure, sure.
Okay. Okay, then let me just make this big here. Phew. Okay. Oh, this is really intense because you can barely go through all the 50 words twice in 60 seconds. So you really need to hurry up. So a little preparation before, but then it
Oh,
should be okay. I would also mute my sound, so
of
like
course.
only for the memorization, yeah, so that I like just have something. And as I said, I cannot guarantee a full 50, so let's see.
I am.
Okay. So
This is crazy. I'm not even trying to follow. Starting with 50? Wow, that's so interesting.
Na, Gebäude, Vertreter, Klügste, okay. Jünger, okay. Good. Subshare. Ah,
Wow,
okay.
well done. Wow.
Whew. Yeah, 44 is usually not such a great result, but
Really?
it is a special situation. Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Usually get 50 every second time or so, but it is special, and yeah, I hope anything over 40
it
was
is
good
very
enough.
impressive. It is
Yeah,
very, very impressive. And
thank you.
24 is more than what somebody normal could do. Let's just say it that way. So really, thank you for that. Very, very impressive. And I think that with this little demonstration, we can dive into a little bit
Yeah,
how we
sure.
came to these results. And yeah, just so to start off,
Mhm.
my first question would just be, how did you discover this passion of yours?
Mhm.
How did this
Mhm.
happen for you to just start being interested in memory
Yeah, I think
techniques?
that's a very important question because obviously maybe it has not become exactly clear for viewers. What I did was not just reading through the words twice and then hoping that I remember them, but this is all memory
Just
technique based,
praying that
yeah.
I will
And
remember.
so it's like not that things like strictly things like a photographic memory, to my knowledge, don't really exist, at least not with cognitive trade-offs. Yeah, so sure there are some savants or so, but things like that without techniques are not doable. And those will be the memory techniques that we will be talking about. And I first stumbled upon them about a year before my first law exam. And it was completely by chance. I was not happy how I was learning. And I stumbled upon a homepage of a non-profit club in Germany, which was like hosting these memory tournaments. I hadn't heard of that at all. I hadn't heard of memory techniques, of nothing. And I think I would also maybe have forgotten it again and yeah, put it in some drawer of like weird things that I will never try. But they had a practice software, and that was really cool because it was like super old school. Like I'm not a program expert, but it was still like in Flash, what you don't do today anymore because there's so many potential vulnerabilities. But you had the software that you downloaded and you had it on your desktop, and you opened it, and you had basically all of the training things that you just saw in Memory League, like names, words, cards. And the cool thing was, A, there were levels, yeah. So you made an account and it started with like level one, 5 digits or so, yeah. Or five cards. Then you got to level two, and as a kid socialized with video games, that was of course something that I was very familiar with. And the other thing was somehow the thing also tapped into your internet, and once you had completed a level, it almost instantly updated a website where the high scores were listed. That is something that you don't see anymore. Yeah, it was like on
Yeah.
the website of this nonprofit that they had a high score list for everybody who was trying that software. And once you did the level on your desktop and you had your internet on, that website was updated. So you
Wow.
instantly saw your score there. And that was also how I first got into contact with people that I know from the German memory tournament scene and everything. And yeah, we didn't know each other. And so that was the first time that we got into contact. And yeah, the real thing where I first started using those techniques was not instantly. Yeah, I was a bit suspicious of this thing where you memorize stuff on locations, and I thought, oh, maybe the whole website is like a scam or whatever. I didn't give them my real name and address and stuff. Um, and I was only doing names in the beginning. Yeah, and names, somehow I got a bit of a knack for names. So that worked nicely. And then I tried words, and I didn't use anything of special memory techniques, just I tried to make a huge story. Like for,
Okay.
and that worked up until level five or so, which was like 20 words. A story of 20 words, you have 5 minutes, not like 1 minute that you have five. That still worked, but I noticed for the next level, 40 words, and every word needed to be correct in the right sequence. Yeah. So it is was quite tough. And 40 words I couldn't do with a story because if you imagine a story of 40 things, it just gets too clunky. And then very reluctantly, I tried these memory techniques for the first time, where you have like a set of places and you're on the desktop and on the shelf behind you and on the TV. And on each of the places that you prepare beforehand, you put one word or two words. Yeah. Like here, I don't know, with the first words are tree and man, and maybe you imagine that one of your streamlights here is a tree and leaves are growing out of it, and a man is sitting here, and then you have the first two words, and so on. And that worked at the second try. And then I noticed, okay, these strange locations that the whole thing works. And then I was somehow hooked. And a few months later, I took part in my first memory tournament and then started there.
Right. Okay. Thank you. We will come back to, of
Sure.
course, like dive into actually the techniques and you will explain them.
Yeah.
But just to continue a little bit more on your journey, um, you finished your law school with these
Yeah.
memory techniques and you were in the top of your class. Um, would you say that they really helped, or did it was like in parallel, so you didn't really like you developed these techniques while you were learning or after you were learning? And just how did you go about, changing your whole career from law to actually becoming a full-time, are you still
Mhm.
doing law or are you a full-time memory coach now?
No, like 20, 10 to 20% mostly for friends who have like a company or so. I do some
Mm,
contract stuff, but it's like mostly on when I have time and when I want to,
yeah.
yeah. So it's more like on a more friendship basis and stuff like that, yeah. But Um, yeah. Okay. I think that's a very good question because the first question is okay, the whole thing works maybe for memorizing 50 words in 1 minute, but is it also possible to transfer this on real information that you need? And the answer for that is definitely yes. Yeah, you can imagine what's the big difference between a page in a book that you read and where you can assign maybe 20 keywords for the most important sentences. And if someone gave you those 20 keywords on a piece of paper, you could basically talk about the page. Yeah, so it is a bit like someone whispering in the ear of an actor on stage. Yeah, if you had that all the time, everybody could be like in a stage play. Maybe they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to act. But what I'm trying to say is with too many words. Sorry, I hope this will not happen in many
Sorry.
more answers. But what I'm saying is, it is a clear possibility to transfer what you can do with singular words to more complex information. Yeah, so it only depends on the structure of the information. And when you think about law, what is law, at least in Germany? Law consists of a few different areas of law, and the areas have different structures. Like in criminal law, you have more memorization, usually more definitions and stuff like that. And in other areas, it's more like how you test whether lawsuits will be successful or whatever. But there is an amount of memorization, I would say between 20 to 30% at least. And that can be really troublesome if you don't have any help, because good luck learning like 200 definitions of specific words in criminal law by just repeating them 20 times. Yeah. And it's almost not possible to do this with normal learning with a higher than, I don't know, 95% accuracy rate. And then you will have spent too much time if you go to 95. Yeah. Maybe you have like 70 or 80 and you will have to cram it the day before, and it's just not satisfying. And what I did with those techniques, is I used them like a large uh, note block where I could make notes for every kind of topic. And we will also be like talking later about how this works with these places. But like just imagine that you can go along a mental path from the desk to whatever
Hmm.
window tree, and on each part of this path, you get some piece of information back. You get a definition for some criminal law stuff. You get the contents of a specific case that might be the basis of one of your exam tests. And that proved incredibly effective. Yeah. And particularly in my second law exam, which is even harder, I had the good fortune that two of the cases that I learned beforehand came almost one-to-one in criminal law. And that was also which went really, really well. And also in like other contexts. So it saved me time, it saved me energy, and it contributed, I would say, in quite a major way to me being among the top 7.5% in both exams. So that was a great help. It was absolutely without question.
But how did you, so didn't you, regret the fact that you had to abandon one to pursue the other for law? I mean, you're not in law anymore at all. You're a memory coach. And I was just wondering, have you
Oh, I
ever
mean,
thought of,
I mean that's that's an interesting question. I mean, I have been working in law firms, and
okay,
I liked it very much. Yeah, but the good thing is with your exams, at least in Germany, that's the case. If your exams are good enough, you can basically choose whether you go to the state and you become a judge, or whether you want to go to some renowned law firm. And I chose the latter. And it was fun, and it was interesting, and it was challenging. I liked the people, so it was like a pleasant atmosphere. But I also rather soon knew that this might not be the thing I want to do till the end of my life. Yeah.
okay.
And yeah, there were a few factors, and one was also that I simply saw how consumed by work people were who were like going up the ladder there. Yeah, so you
Mm,
start with around 60 hours a week, which might still sound acceptable. I don't know to a Canada or otherwise audience, but it's still rather tough. So
no,
you
it's tough. It's
yeah.
tough.
And you can imagine for every level that you advance towards partnership, you can add ten
Mm,
hours or so, yeah? And there is not that much delegation when a partner is like responsible for a 500 million contract, then he can say, okay, my associates will like manage the whole thing and I just go to the negotiation. And I just saw that many of those people who were like 50 or 55, they just felt like drained and also stressed. And I feel okay, even if you make it that far, why should you go deeper and deeper into that cage? Yeah. And
mm,
then I noticed, I mean, I was at the time also using some of my vacation days to still go to memory tournaments around the world. And because if you are as successful, you also have like the opportunity to get some kind of sponsorships and so on.
yeah.
And I also won some international tournaments. And after the Singapore Open, and I got approached by someone from a company in the Emirates. Yeah, and they said, "Yeah, could we have a short interview?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And yeah, we would like to film this for our boss who sent us here. And could you imagine having like a 5-day course there in Abu Dhabi? And so on. I said, "Yeah, sure." And we would be talking a bit, and then I would get the reply after I was like home again. Yeah, we would like to have you there. And after that first thing, others followed, and it was something where I noticed, okay, that is something that is fun for me. I like to teach. I like to talk
Mm,
about that. And I like to see in people's eyes how they see this huge, undiscovered world of potential in front of them, which sounds incredibly
yeah.
cheesy, but it's just true. Yeah. You have this tool that you can use in such a flexible way for almost anything you want to memorize when you feel overwhelmed by the amount of information. And from that one engagement, I mean, I had a few first. There, others came by mouth to mouth and recommendations, and after a while, I saw, yeah, that might be something that is more fun for me, even more fun maybe than working in a law firm, which was not the worst, but it was simply, and it would give me the opportunity to be like self-employed and to be my own boss
Yeah,
and to
of
think
course.
about my own future. And then I just took the step at the end of 2014, and it worked out marvelously. So I really like it.
That's great. Talking about these, tournaments and
Mhm.
championships,
Yeah.
how do you have like a favorite event or a favorite one that you experienced? Or also, how is it a little bit organized? I was
Mhm.
wondering because I don't really know like, all of these worlds. I honestly didn't
Yeah.
even know about memory tournaments until
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
found
Yeah.
your TED Talk. But yeah,
Mhm.
just in terms of just explaining
Mhm.
how it's organized and maybe also
Sure.
if something surprised you, like
Mhm.
something that you didn't expect there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think in a very simple way, there are two major branches of the whole memory tournament world. One is older and one is a bit newer. The second one we have just seen on Memory League. That is like the newer one. Also, to me, it's a bit more fun because it's like shorter and you have a duel. You are not competing by yourself, which you do in the first branch. The first branch exists since the beginning of the 90s, and it's more like in track and field when you are a decathlete and you do all of the 10 disciplines. You might
Mm,
be, for an example, be like running 1,500 meter against the other people, but it doesn't matter whether you become first in that race, but how fast you are for yourself, because each of your 10 scores is converted into points according to a specific points key. And The one is the winner of the decathlon who has the highest total scores at the end of the 10th discipline. And that's how it is in track and field, and that's how it also is in that branch. You have 10 different events, usually going over 2 days. World Championship goes over 3 days, much longer. Minimum memorization time is 5 minutes. Longest memorization time, 1 hour, which
Oh,
is
okay,
also
wow.
super hard to train. Yeah, I even when I started, didn't find the time to like train for 1 hour memorization, 2 hour recall. I just imagine what that does with your day, yeah. And
Wow.
but that's basically the traditional way, what we call the traditional format, and the other, the memory league thing, we call the modern format. And I got the impression that the traditional format is still very classical, and you still be, for example, we had our World Championship a week ago in Mumbai with over 200 people. It was really great. I was not participating, but I was kind of in contact with the organizers. It went really cool. An Indian became world champion, which is of course a big deal there, and it was really nice for everybody. Um, but I feel that the future lies in the other format because it's much more accessible and also more fun, in my opinion, I have to say. Yeah.
Mm.
And with regards to surprises, I have to say, usually you don't get that surprised in those tournaments. For the decathlon events, I think usually the biggest surprise is if things start on time because you like always have delays. Um, Sometimes you are surprised if you go for a very risky attempt. Yeah, for example, in cards, you can go for a very fast time, and you can imagine it's. I'm sure you could like graph it with some kind of function that the faster you go, of course, the lower your accuracy gets, and the higher the chance that you
Yeah.
have a gap that you can fill. So if you have to go for a time that is very fast, but you know that you need it in order to get the win, that's nice if you get it. So cards is always the final discipline. So this is always like maximum suspense, yeah. And yeah, what was nice in a German championship in 2011, I was basically trailing the whole tournament against a very strong opponent, and I was creeping up on him, always a bit closer, yeah, because you have this total score and it's getting, of course,
Mm.
updated every discipline. And I knew I needed to have a new cards world record in order to win the competition. And I went for 21.19 seconds, and it felt really perfect in the head. And I overtook him by like 50 points. So then the results are something like 8,500 to 8,450 or so. And
Yeah,
that was
okay.
cool that this worked out. Yeah. Maybe not a real surprise, but at least a pleasant one, maybe. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
That's great. Why don't you, because you said that you haven't done the Mumbai one. Why do you still do some world championships or have you stopped?
Yeah, no. I have like not stopped, but this simply didn't work out with my other
Oh, okay.
schedules. It's always a bit tough. But yeah, my focus has shifted a bit towards the administrative side of things, which we will be like also talking about later. So it was mostly about getting an organizer for that World Championship, and we were happy that we could rely on a very nice and professional organization team in Mumbai, which had also done the World Championship 2 years earlier. And it was the first time that you had a World Championship where you had like live streaming. It is not so interesting, of course, compared to Memory League because you just see people sitting at their laptop. Yeah, it's not like a dual thing. But we had a live streaming of the award ceremony, which is like still online, which was so cool with a real nice
Mm.
host and all of the emotions. And they carried the Indian world champion like on stage, like one of the organization team was like 2 meters or so, and the winner was like 170, and he had him on his shoulder. Yeah. Yeah, it is like moments like this where you feel okay, not only competing, but also helping to make competitions happen can be something extremely rewarding.
Yeah, I imagine. I love like competition is such a way of also meeting new people. Is there you would say is there a small community? Do you know each other by now or you encounter, I imagine, a lot of same people. How does that go about?
There is definitely a core of people that you regularly meet, particularly at
Hmm.
the World Championships. We are like also regularly in contact on Facebook. There's a group with around 8,000 members, with I would say
Wow.
maybe, but
Okay.
maybe like a few hundred being constantly active. Yeah. So of course it's like in every group
I
you have
mean,
people.
still a few hundreds.
Yeah, and I mean, in the official world ranking, I think we have like around 10,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, at least 8,000. That's of course everybody who has ever taken part, but new people are always coming and asking about how things are being done. And there is another website, artofmemory.com, which is associated with the Memory League page. And there are also many things are happening, people asking about techniques and about the championships and so on. So it's a very friendly community and I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so talking about I think more of uh what are you doing right now? Because I know that right now you became a coach. You have your own program, courses. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? I saw like when
Mhm.
went on your page to like contact you, I saw these different courses. You had like student courses, you had
Mhm.
courses for different ones. How did you even create this program? How did this all
Mhm.
happen? And yeah.
Um, yeah, I was already, while I was still working with the law firms, I was already thinking about how to transfer those techniques, which I was mostly using for competitions and for my law studies, also to other subjects. And it became clear rather quickly that this is doable and this is nicely doable. So I was thinking about a few, let's say, scenarios for different contents and was preparing a few courses. And then I simply started offering them. And um, yeah, it's just the what I did is I also set up a homepage then, which was surprisingly easy to set up and to program and where I describe my courses a bit. So I'm offering courses basically in a way for everything. My website, I may plug this here, is schoolofmemory.com, very easy to remember. No hyphens and nothing. And my courses range from, yeah, the very basic thing like learning facts, yeah, which you can imagine is very close to learning a list of words as I did here. Yeah, a text and a
Yeah.
list of words are very closely related to more specific things like learning languages, where it can also be used extremely profitable. I like also I've used it a bit when I had time for yeah, learning a bit of Chinese, in particular, reading some like basic signs, a basic set of characters. And I'm also offering, surprisingly, with the huge interest, chess memory courses. It's crazy. Since 2020 or so, yeah, when also the Queen's Gambit series
Oh
hit
yeah.
on Netflix, and so I think those chess memory courses, which I started mainly offering because I like chess, yeah, and I thought maybe someone likes it, are constituting maybe 30 or 40% of my course participants, yeah. And
Wow.
you always have something new. I once had someone who wanted to like paint or draw better, and they always had a problem because when you have this bottle and you try to draw it, yeah, then of course when you look away, it's getting as fuzzy as it's here, yeah, because I have portrait lighting on. And that was the problem that the person had. So what you can also do is that you can look at a specific part of the bottle, maybe this here, yeah. Oh no,
Wow.
now it works.
It's working with you.
Yeah, it's working with me. And when it's like small enough that you can really imagine it in whole, like in a whole, yeah. Like when you make it smaller and smaller, suddenly when you close your eyes, you can imagine it in high detail, yeah? Because your
Mhm.
brain's graphic processor, in a way, manages a small part of it with high resolution, but not a large part. And if you have like these smaller parts, you can treat each of the smaller parts of your object that you want to draw like a word in a list of words. You know, you put one
Yeah,
of
wow.
on these memory places and that helped. But I usually also, if someone has something really uncommon, I had also a person who wanted to become a Canadian fighter pilot and for the
Okay.
Royal Air Force of Canada, I think, RAF at
Yeah.
least, yeah. And they have very tough tests. They have of course tests for coordination, but they have also a huge memory element in their tests. And we were practicing this like half a year or so. Really, this was basically the most challenging thing I was preparing people for. This is even compared to a law or medicine exam, that was tough because you have limited time and it was not so easy to simulate the things, lots of information at the same time. So if anyone wants to memorize anything, bottom line, I can create a course for them. And if it's something that many people want to memorize, the chance is very high that there is already a course for them.
So it's like usually one-on-one courses, or is it with a lot
It's
of people?
that's the majority. Yeah, I also offer group courses, but that of course requires people that they come to me mostly as in a group. What I don't yet do, which I might add, is that I have specific dates where a group course might happen
Mm,
if X people register. But mostly I'm giving one-on-one courses because this is also extremely efficient. People can ask questions, and I
yeah,
don't have to divert my own attention.
great. That's so interesting. I love that. Okay, well, on that note, I think we should dive into the techniques because we
Yeah,
talked so much about
absolutely.
how all of this
Yeah.
works, but we don't know what is the
Okay.
techniques. So, yeah, I would say first question would be just what's the most like the first technique that you learned or the one that
Mhm.
you use the most, or even,
Yeah,
if you could share a few of them
sure.
just to explain.
The most important and in a way the core technique is called the method of loci, loci method, however, and loci is
Yeah.
simply the Latin word for locations. So from that you can also see that the whole thing exists since ancient times, since antiquity was a main staple in Roman oratory schools. Every rich senatorial youth needed also to memorize their speeches they wanted to hold later on. So as there was always a section about memoria, and it used that. It was also in ancient Greece, probably also in ancient India, and it works always in the same way. It uses the fact that your brain can connect information extremely well with a specific location, place, something that you perceive as being outside of you and having some kind of extension and being part of a three-dimensional environment that you can walk around. Yeah, that can be fictional, like in a video game, or a video someone else has done where they're walking around something. It can be from your own experience, a place that you visited. It can be the place that you are sitting at the moment. I'm sitting at the moment. It's very clear. And that this works, everybody can test for themselves by thinking of an arbitrary place that I have visited in the past. I always use the example of a place where they were on holiday and a hotel maybe and the dining hall there, yeah? And they imagined the exact table that they were sitting there. And the chances quite high that they won't think of an empty dining hall and an empty table, but about people sitting left and right to them, maybe
Mhm.
the smell of the food, maybe the lighting of the room, whether it was like already night or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe some waves on the outside. And this is how our brain, in a way, orders your life experience, your life memories, mostly by places as reference. And this is extremely hardwired. So humans most probably have used it for a very long time. And some ingenious person in the past, nobody knows why, who, got the idea that, okay, it's nice and well that my brain is using this for my own life memory, but how about I want to store there what I have in my wine shop? Or maybe some priest thought, how about I can memorize this complicated prayer to that specific god or goddess, yeah? And or a philosophical text or whatever, typical
Yeah.
stuff that people wanted to learn in antiquity, yeah, or another language or whatever. And then they noticed, okay, it works if I just prepare places in a specific sequence. And then instead of having an experience at that place, I just put something there. Maybe the person put a bottle or an amphora of red wine on their first place. And their first place might have been the fountain in the middle of the city, yeah? Maybe then the next location were some stairs leading up to a temple. Then the next location might have been one of the main columns of the temple. Then in the inside, maybe the statue of a Greek goddess or so. And then location number five, maybe an opening in the wall where the sun is shining through. So it's just important that it is a sequence of places that you know, that you can relate to, that you can not imagine perfectly, but where you can just even if it's just blurry or even if it's even without color, it doesn't matter, even if it's just like a grid of lines, as long as you get the feeling that this is a place where you can walk around. Yeah? Example, let's everybody try this here quickly
Okay.
with five places. Uh, we can talk about the places that I might be like using now. Everybody can also use their own, but let's just let me.
Yeah.
First location could be the desk I'm sitting here. Yeah.
Okay.
Second location could be the trophy shelf, maybe the upper layer here. Then let's also start to think about places that you don't see. Let's say that here is a TV. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then location number four, a bit more to the left from my side, would be a window. Yeah? Everybody can think of another window, but it's a window. And outside of the window, next to the street, is a tree, like a typical 10-meter high tree or whatever. So we have desk, trophy shelf, TV,
Yeah.
window, and tree. And those are your five locations. Locations are the memory spaces. They are like treasure chests where you put your information in. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, like every chest, you can put different treasures in and out. So it's people have also compared it in antiquity to a wax tablet, which you could write on and then you scratch over it like an etch-a-sketch or something. I think it's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
used
Yeah.
today. So now we have the basics, and now I will be giving you five things, one for each place. And you just connect them to the place as you wish. Yeah, we'll give you a short example for the first one. Just imagine a cat on the desk. Yeah, and you might think of whatever you want. The cat is maybe sleeping or scratching with the desk or whatever. Yeah, just something. Doesn't need to be crazy. Doesn't need to be exaggerated. It can be, but just use your first association. Whatever it can also be very logical. A cat is sleeping there. If it
Sure.
works for you, very nice. Second location here, take like one of the trophies here, and imagine like a scarf, like a red scarf draped around it. Then here the TV. Just imagine that next to the TV is like a stack of books. Yeah? Maybe the person wants to counter their TV consumption with then like reading. Yeah. Then at the window, just imagine a tennis ball, football, whatever, and a ball being thrown at the window and not shattering it, but bouncing off it, and the window is vibrating a bit. Yeah. So, and then, and the top of the tree outside, there's a bird of prey, maybe a hawk. Yeah, sitting there, looking around, maybe looking at the window and looking inside, and you see the hawk, and then okay. And could you still say the five words? Maybe can you say the five locations first?
The desk,
Yeah,
the um
yeah,
like I don't know how to say it, but
yeah. The trophy, whatever,
the
cabinet, drawer,
trophy.
I don't know. Yeah,
Then we walk towards, wait, desk, trophy. Then you have the TV.
yes,
Then you have the window. Then
yeah.
you have the tree.
And what happens on each location?
There's a cat on the
Yeah,
desk,
nice.
and there's a scarf
Yeah,
on
around one
the
of the
like
yeah.
near the
Mhm.
trophies. Then the person tries to read books instead of
Yeah,
watching the TV.
yeah, yeah,
And then there is a tennis ball that bounces off the
yeah,
window, and then there is a bird like a hawk on the
yeah.
tree.
Nice, nice. And the very cool thing is, what I'm usually saying, and that's what I'm doing in the first hour of my courses, and what I'm usually saying then is that this is one of the major steps to have taken, that you simply see that the whole thing works.
Hmm.
And what is like really great about this is that using those locations can be scaled up without increasing the difficulty. What I mean by that is learning one page from a book feels much different compared to learning 10 pages in a book in a row. Yeah. Because you have this typical fading effect. And when you're on page five, it's not super clear anymore what you have read on page one. Yeah. When you're
Yeah.
reading that moment, then you have to repeat again and whatever. Yeah. Memorizing not those five things on five locations, but for example, 50 on 50 locations is not more difficult. It just takes maybe 10 times longer. But when you're practiced enough, that is also not a long amount of time we're like talking about. Yeah. And you might want to repeat it once, but the rate of retention is much higher because when you are trained in those techniques, you have learned that you can you can focus on the next location and leave the location where you've put something behind. This is something that people don't do often on instinct when they are learning stuff normally, because the little boy who wants to buy something for his mom and he's repeating the same five things in his head all of the time. Yeah, that's a classical thing. Or someone cramming for an exam and then circulating everything, and then they are happy when they can like write it down because then they don't have to think
Yeah.
about it all of the time. That is something that is not only stressful but also counterproductive, because you don't have very ordered thoughts then. Suddenly something small disturbs you and everything is gone. And instead, if you connect something properly with a location, then the location keeps it for you. It's a bit like outsourcing your memory to something that is not in this associative
Hmm.
crucible here, yeah, but it's like more in a very ordered place outside, and it's not hard to make that connection. I mean, if I ask you tomorrow what was on the desk, you might still think on the cat, for example. Yeah.
Um, what I wonder is that you don't have infinite amount of spaces, right? So how do you like does it mean that you have to reuse some spaces when you want to memorize something? And isn't it getting sometimes confusing when, I don't know, I need to memorize X amount of things and I'm reusing a space that I used to memorize something else? And
Mhm.
I'm just
Sure.
wondering how do you make this work?
That's like also a very good question. It's point is, if you have used a space for a specific information
Mhm.
and you've only used it once, let's say they have used it to train with a list of random words. Yeah, that's what you do in
Yeah.
the beginning, just that you're getting quicker. Then usually after a few days, 2 or 3 days, you can use the same set of locations again. And it's like an interesting superposition almost. After 2 or 3 days, you could still recall what was on that location. But if you don't do this, you can also overwrite it. Yeah? Of course, it takes a bit
Okay.
longer if you dedicate those locations to something you wanted to learn for in a long time. Yeah, often people, let's say, dedicate a few hundred locations to their exam information. If you then had the exam and you want to learn something else, then then you can still overwrite things, and it still works. You might want to wait a bit longer, but it's no problem at all. And so either you can reuse locations, or if the images of the old information are like still there, then you can also integrate those into the locations. For example, I had an example with someone I'm preparing for a wine exam. Yeah, they want to become a wine expert for a restaurant or also for working with wineries. And she told me, okay, we had this bottle of wine on our second location ever, and I can't forget it. What shall I do? Then you can still say, okay, now the bottle of wine is part of the location, and you just use it there,
Oh.
and you like integrate it here, and you strip it of all the meaning, and it just becomes an object. Yeah? So that is never really like a problem. You can always be like flexible here. And with regards to the amount of locations, sure, there are not maybe the brain is not able to memorize a limitless amount of information or of spaces, but I know people who have thousands of locations, and it's just a matter of consistency, of like doing it constantly.
Hmm.
And yeah, for I think for the typical law or medical exam, people usually were content with around 1,000 locations, 2,500, which sounds a lot, but if you imagine how much time you have to learn and to prepare, and if you do like 20 or 30 a day, it doesn't take long, 5 to 10 minutes or so, then you get to that point very, very quickly. So you people underestimate to how many places they have been in their life.
Hmm. No,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So
But so,
getting enough
oh yeah.
locations is no problem. Sorry.
No, of course.
Please, please.
But so, okay, so you're talking here, we're talking about maybe names or
Mhm.
images. But when for example, when we talked about deck of cards,
Mhm.
is this the same technique or is this another technique that you use to memorize? Because you will not, I don't know, for me, when you have 52 cards,
Mhm.
you'll not be like,
Sure.
okay, on my table there is a queen of hearts, then on
Yeah.
my, you know,
Yeah.
how does that
And
work?
everything that you memorize will always be brought back to the list of words that we had, to those list of random words. So I always start with a list of random words. And it just depends on how you convert it. There is a conversion to convert numbers into words, and for the cards, you can do the same. What I'm doing, for example, is for the cards, if you think about mm, the five of hearts and the seven of diamond. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For me, for the value of the card, I use my number letter system. We will be talking about that soon, like afterwards. So
Yeah.
basically, the idea is that for every digit from 0 to 9, you have a letter that is assigned to that digit. And in my system, it's a bit different than in the classical one. I really try to use letters that look as similar as possible to the digit. So for example, in my system, 5 is an S, yeah, because it looks like an S just with a bit of a more pointy S. M, if you let it fall, then it's a 3. Or if you switch it up, it's a 3, and if the 3 falls down, it's an M.
Interesting.
2 is an N. 1 is a T. It's very clear. 6, if you imagine a lowercase print B, the 6 looks very similar. It just has a little hook at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Same if you turn it around for 9 and G, for a lowercase g and the 9. 7 is just an uppercase L turn to its head. And so the idea is that very soon you will be able, when you want to read single digits as letters. And then you can construct words from it by inserting as many vowels between the consonants. It's like always consonants that you want. Yeah?
Wow.
And if we transfer that to the cards, then it's just a small extension, because for the suit of the card, I always use the same vowel. Yeah? For example, we had the five of hearts and the seven of diamonds. Five, as I said, is an S. So the word I have for these two cards starts with an S. Heart is for me an A, because somehow A is always at the end of, I don't know, female names or whatever, and it just fits. And so we have SA, then 7 from the seven of diamonds. 7, is a turned around uppercase L, so it's an L, SAL. And the diamond I have assigned to the vowel E. So it's SALE, sail. If I always, when I see the combination of five of hearts and seven of diamonds, I see, I would see if I were now English sail, I mean, I have like German words, but it works just the same way. And then I would have a prepared image for like sail, I don't know, like people shaking hands or someone having like money in the other hand and putting it on the cashier. And then I put that on my location. So it's a very quick translation process and a retranslation
Wow.
process. That's everything it takes.
So going on to this system,
Yeah.
this is your four-digit system, right? Or how is
Yeah.
it different? How is
I
it
mean,
called? Because
it's the system I'm like talking about is like the basis for all
yeah,
number letter systems. Yeah, so people are usually starting with having images for every two-digit combination. Yeah, for example, 57 could also be SL, and then you can put any kind of vowels that you want, so like for a new number system. Yeah, and those are only 100 different images, which sounds a lot, but when you're memorizing numbers with them, they can repeat quickly. Yeah, and usually people have like a three-digit system, like with 1,000 images for the memory tournaments, yeah, not for memorizing stuff in history or anywhere else in
yeah.
biology or physics, yeah. And I have just expanded this three-digit system to a four-digit system with some kind of modification of the three-digit images. Yeah, somehow it works for me. But I've never learned those 10,000 images. Yeah. So I've
Really?
never, yeah, because when I'm also teaching learning digits or so, then people always ask me, okay, now I have to make a list when they're starting with a two-digit system. Now I have to make a list of 100 of those 100 combinations, yeah, from 00 to 99. And I have to learn them, right? And before don't know this list, then I can start practicing. No, I say, no, no, no. You make the list just to check that you have an image for every combination, and then you immediately start practicing. Because I hope it's not getting too technical, but I think this is maybe also otherwise interesting.
No, no,
Um,
it is.
you are aiming for a quick translation of the digits into a word. And what
Mm-hmm.
usually happens when people are putting much thought into creating this list, yeah, of 50, 57 is sale, whatever, yeah. And then they see a combination of digits, like 57, yeah. And the first thing that their brain associates with SL is not sale, but maybe slide, yeah. And then they say, yeah, slide, no, that's wrong because it's not in my list. If it's
Oh,
like very clear. And then, what
okay.
was in my list? And I always say to people, you practice and there you see your first association, and that's the most important thing. And if it's not in your list, then you change your list because otherwise you are not quick enough. Yeah? This is, as I said, a bit technical, but it's one of the main bottlenecks why people are not getting faster because they are trying to learn that list first and it doesn't work. That's like
Mm,
everything. But it's only
mm.
relevant for people who want to memorize digits fast. So,
No, I get that. No, that's honestly, that's very impressive. I understand what you're saying in terms of, I think it takes a little bit of more time in the beginning, but
mhm.
it probably gains a lot of time in the
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
as you say. Um, You mentioned also, helping, for example, for like language courses like
yeah,
Chinese, and
yeah.
I'm learning Chinese, and
Mhm.
I honestly don't understand how we can, because Chinese is very different in terms of its characters. It's not an
Absolutely.
alphabet or it's not,
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
How do you help for Chinese learning?
Mhm. I mean, Chinese is interesting in that regard that you cannot, or at least only to a certain degree, guess from the character to the pronunciation. That's one
Yeah,
major problem. Yeah, you have, but the other problem is also that you need a way to memorize the specific tone with the four different
exactly.
tones.
Yeah,
And you also need to memorize the meaning and how the character looks. And if you want to be really advanced, also how the character is written. Yeah.
yeah.
So this is not like one word in a foreign language, like in French, and one, or in Italian. I know in Canada, French is often not like a foreign
Mm,
language, of course, and like in Italian or whatever, and one meaning. Yeah, it's a bit simpler for alphabet-based languages, but there for Chinese, you simply need to differentiate between the elements that you want to know for a specific character, and you can also use the location method to structure it. Yeah? Because one very important thing that I didn't mention yet is that these locations are not only very useful for memorization, but they are also extremely useful for being able to structure information. Of course, it's nice that you can also recall the information, but you can also structure unordered information extremely efficiently. For example, what I've been doing in the limited time that I've used the whole thing that I had was that I was using a book. Say what I have it here. Let me see. Mhm. Yeah, that's I'm not associated, but that's the book I was using. And the very cool thing is that it has 1,200 of the most frequent words, and they are ordered according to alphabetically ordering their pinyin.
Okay.
So, and the pinyin themselves, if they are the same, yeah, they are also ordered according to tones. So, like the first tone, second tone, and if you just start to, of course, with a bit of additional learning about the radicals and everything, but what you can simply do is that you start with a page. Here, for example, we have can to look. Yeah, here, this, I hope it's being shown. We just
Yeah.
put my video setting down, portrait lighting, then it should be better. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there and you can put that on your location. You can put maybe on a side location to it, or on the next one, you can put the meaning somewhere around in the same area. You can draw a roundabout image of the character. It doesn't need to be the exact character. Sometimes you can also make a symbol for the character itself. Maybe it looks like something. It's like just that you try to bring every element that you want to learn, meaning character writing, stroke order,
Yeah.
into some kind of visual form, which doesn't need to be too concrete. Yeah, you don't need to make anything in some kind of kindergarten children's book. Yeah, but in some way that your visual brain can like operate with it and connect it to one of those locations, and then you just repeat it in a specific rhythm, and then you have a very nice access. And the big advantage here is like, of course, that you don't need to memorize the tones very often because you know that they are in a specific sequence. Yeah? In particular for words with the same pinyin but different tones, it
Mm.
is very clear for me that if one word starts here, then it is most probably first or second tone, and then I will also remember the whole thing. So it's
Wow.
it's of course a bit more complex. That's
Yes,
why I
of
also
course.
say if people come to me with different kind of informations
Yeah.
and I don't have a course prepared, it's good that I know this maybe 1 or 2 weeks before that I can, in a way, tailor make the
Mm-hmm.
application of the techniques to the necessary level of complexity. And then usually it works to start, yeah. So
So
Chinese is one of the
are you
most, yeah.
learning, yeah, are you learning a lot of languages?
I try to do when I have time. So I did it for
Yeah.
Italian. I learned a bit of Russian. Yeah, of course, English you don't need to learn because you're so immersed in it every time. Yeah,
Mm.
and it's also very similar to German in a way. And yeah, I had the fortune to have learned Latin in school. And so also learning another Romance language like French is also not so hard. But I think in the order it's like in German, English, Italian, Russian, Chinese, and then a bit of French. So yeah,
Wow.
when I have the time, yeah. But and I'm not
No,
fluent
I
in
imagine you're a very,
like
very
these.
busy person with all of these courses. Um, Going on to more like I would say the structure and
Yeah,
also like for students,
yeah,
uh, how for just first thing, how do you structure your days of like of
mhm,
training, and
yeah.
how would you advise a student with like a minimal amount of like also, we're all busy, and
Yeah.
I was just wondering more, how would you advise
Mhm,
students to structure their training if they want to start learning that or learning these
mhm,
techniques?
yeah. Yeah, I would say that it makes definitely sense to, when you're starting, to invest at least half an hour a day in order to get used to the whole thing.
Hmm.
Because in the beginning, at least, you need some practice. It's a bit like someone who wants to run a marathon. You need to get
Yeah,
some basic endurance. You need to first start with 5 kilometers and 10. That means you need to
of
practice. You
course.
need to have some locations. You need to practice the whole connecting thing. But the learning curve is not steep at all. So with after a very short time, you can use it for the stuff that you want to learn. Of course, some guidance is like useful, but you also need to invest some time in order to create some new locations. The more wax tablets or the more treasure chests you have, the better, of course. And then, of course, you also need some time to use the locations that you already have for the study materials that you want to learn. The structure is always so that using those techniques is not at all intended to A, replace understanding, or B, replace how people are learning at the moment. It is more like a supplementary tool if people, after they have engaged in the normal learning methods, yeah, repeating flashcards and
Yeah.
underlining and 20 different colors on a page and whatever, when they notice that specific kinds of information simply cannot be recalled, even
Mm-hmm.
when repeating them 10 or 20 times, which is not only frustrating, but also costs lots of time and energy. So it's like a plan B tool to
Yeah.
have a very reliable, accurate, and sustainable, if you want, method to have these information parts memorized. It is also, by the way, so that the more you practice, the faster you are with creating locations, the faster you are with learning. So it's a bit like paying back a loan. Yeah, the more you have paid back, the more you will pay back, and the lower is your interest rate. Yeah, so it's the same. If the higher your memorization ability, the more time you will have to learn, and the less time you will need to prepare for the next learning session.
Are you
That's how it
still
is.
for in terms of memory, are
Yeah.
you still improving, or do you think there is a limit where at some point you get the maximum amount of things that you can memorize?
Actually, I think I'm still improving. And
Okay.
this is like crazy, yeah, because I'm like 46 and people and I mean normally there's this supposed threshold of 30, but if you dig a bit deeper, then A, it does not apply to this kind of specific memory. Yeah. People are also not starting to get worse at remembering their own life when they get 30. Because it's so hardwired and connected to locations, I think it's very resistant to any kind of normal memory aging. Yeah. That's like point one. I've also talked to some neuroscientists about this, and they say, yeah, if it's that for you, then we will be the last two to say, no, it can't be because science says this and this. Yeah. No, it's just, and I also think it is a very nice way to keep your brain fit because you engage in many different things at once. You try to understand the information, then you create something visual, then you walk down those different pathways. And yeah, what I also very much like about it is, okay, the question was, am I improving? I think I've answered this. Now
Yes,
let's
no, go on, go on.
okay.
It's really interesting what you're saying.
I'm like just thinking of something that might also be very interesting for students is that feedback that I get regularly from people who are prepared, who are learning this for tests and so on, yeah, that the um, that the act of going to such a location where you have placed a memory and to retrieve it there has interestingly a very calming effect. My
Mm,
personal theory is it has a bit to do with its safe space mechanism, which is also used as a psychological method to calm people down. Using, for example, a desk, trophy shelf, TV, window, and tree, and
yeah,
then going along that path during an exam or so is in a way also visiting a safe space of you where you have full control and where you have some
yeah.
information. Then you go to the next one, it has a certain
No, I haven't
rhythm.
thought about this.
Yeah, and this is helping people extremely to get into the flow of things. Yeah, to not to stumble at the first question, but to get the information rolling and to be simply in a very different mood. Yeah, and it's the awful thing is you also feel safe not only because this is a place that you have created, but also because it is extremely blackout resistant. Even people who have exam panic, things like that, it is almost impossible if you have connected an image properly to go to the location and to be so nervous that you're not seeing it. And
Mm,
this is also has like a calming effect. Yeah. And this is much different from having learned like a page in a book and just living from that you can associate from A to B and C. That is rather that can be susceptible to some kinds of exam nervousness or so. But if you have the visual element, it's much more stable and much more robust. And I think this is a huge plus for exam situations.
that's true, especially in stressful exams. No, you're right. It's very nice. I was wondering also in terms of memory, do you now that you've trained so much, do you use it instinctively without even thinking, or do you still need to activate the process? Like even for example, if you're reading a book, are you immediately having these locations generated, or you want to remember, or sometimes you just don't think about this and you just completely um close off this part of your brain.
No, it's always a voluntary process. So it's nothing that kind of intrudes into your thoughts and then suddenly you put something on the location. I think that would be not such a useful tool because then it
Yeah.
would maybe also, yeah, impact how you perceive the world, even if you don't want it to. And that's not the
Hmm.
case at all. It's really like, I know if you learn a skill like a martial art or like a craft or so, if you don't use that craft or that skill, then it's not present. Yeah. So it's no problem at all. I'm like just when I'm learning something and when I'm using the locations, what is almost automatic is when I want to use them is that I almost intuitively recognize if an information can be learned normally or if it's information where I would want to use the locations. And that's super
So
useful.
sometimes you still learn information without locations and you just use the regular memory.
Sure, sure. That's
Okay, yeah.
also why I said before that people should always keep their
This
normal
as
learning
plan B.
methods. Yeah. And if
Yeah,
they, for example, learn their 10 pages in a book and they feel they have a satisfying recall and they have understood everything and they know it, there's no need to put it on some places if people are
I
confident
get
that
it.
they also know it a month later. Yeah. But sometimes things are so understanding
Mm,
based that the understanding itself is a very strong memory technique. Yeah? And then you don't need anything else. But the more the information becomes like a list of unconnected or of disconnected information, the more your brain starts to rebel against it. Yeah? Because then the brain cannot make a connection between those things. Like a classical case, the 10 longest rivers in Canada or the 10 highest mountains. So that's not something that you can understand. You might have some specific context about one river or about one mountain, but to have those things in sequence is not something that the brain is good at. And for any instance where you encounter such
mm.
kinds of information, the locations, I don't even bother to try to learn it normally because I know it's not efficient. I just put those on 10 locations in 30 seconds and over.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think I asked you most of the questions that I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Is there some things that you still want to mention or that you want to talk about?
Um, I can only say if people are interested in memory tournaments, then they can visit the IAM website, IAM, so
Yes?
minusmemory.org. And our training page is IAMWMC, like IAM World Memory Championship, but just six letters.com, and then click on competition. And memoryleague.com, you have seen, if you want to have a full account, I think it costs $25 a year. But training, I think, is free. I think the full account is just for
I
playing
really want to
matches.
train more. I want to
Yeah.
try.
And Memory League is super fun. So, and I mean,
Yeah,
it's of course always a question whether you want to call a mind sport or sport, but I think this is just about words. Yeah, it is in a way a competition because people are competing with skill, and everybody who likes to compete against others and also to improve themselves. And by the way, by improving themselves, also getting more proficient in using those methods for their studies or for other things. That's a great way to spend your time. Maybe not all your
I
time, but some
completely
time at
agree.
least.
I have a few then like closing questions
Yeah,
just for you.
yeah.
This is more general. This is
Mhm.
just things that I like to reflect upon
Yeah.
and that I like to ask
Mhm.
in the end. So I would say, first of all, how would you define success? What is success for you?
I think success can be, the idea of success can be a bit of a pitfall because I
Mm,
have made the experience that if you focus too much on the result of anything, then it's very hard to get your full performance in that because it makes you nervous, too much afraid of making mistakes and so on. I think it's important to define success not only by have I reached that goal or not, and if I haven't reached the goal, I failed. Failed is also a very toxic word, I feel, yeah. But success for me is that I keep challenging me, that I keep challenging myself, that I keep trying to improve. And if I see that I'm improving, if I don't make one of the challenges that I set myself, whether in sports or in my private life or whatever, then I just try again. I think a healthy attitude towards success and not success should already an important success in your life, I think, because it also makes everything so much easier.
I like that idea of success is how you view success,
Yeah.
but it's a good one. I like this answer. I would say, what is what's one advice that you could give for students just in general, and also what is the worst advice that you have ever received? Well,
That's like a good question. I think let's start with the worst advice, maybe that we end on a
Oh,
strong note. I think the worst advice, this is the worst advice is often not something that people tell you directly, but
yeah.
that you see in people's behavior,
Mm,
and where this then maybe creates some kind of pressure or some kind of, yeah, I don't know, some kind of vortex to follow that. And with regards to university studies, that was exactly that I saw groups of people making each other nervous half a year before the exam. What, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that, and what have you learned? And this then also leads to stress and to envy and to toxic group behavior, and nobody likes what the other has reached because they put out then themselves into too much pressure. So I always try to keep the amount of people that I was interacting during university, at least when I was learning, not too large, because it's better to have a few people that you can trust and with whom you can talk openly about your progress and about everything, and where you know that they will want to listen to, than to engage with too many people, and then you get a mix of different attitudes, which might be nice to broaden your horizon, but
yeah,
not everybody's perspectives are useful for your own life, you know.
I
And
agree.
that would be um my advice in a way, yeah, that in order to focus, it's also useful to focus your circle of friends and acquaintances so that you really have people that you can fully trust, and don't care about what others do or what others are like learning, and don't care at all about any kind of panic that you have so much to learn. Use your own mind, use your own reasoning, and then decide for yourself what you learn and how you structure your learning process, because in the end it must work for
Yeah,
you and work
it's
for
personal.
your own plan.
I get it. Thank you for that advice. I agree. We need to make sure our environment helps us become the person that we want to become.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say, what's your biggest and boldest dream right now? What do you want now that you are a teacher, now that you're a coach,
Yeah.
now that you do all of this? It doesn't have to be with memory, actually. It can be
Hmm.
whatever you want right now.
It's a very interesting question, because since what I'm doing at the moment is so much fun for me and so fulfilling, that it my focus has mostly shifted from like these huge long-term plans, what I want to do in five
Yeah.
years, to I'm happy if I enjoy every day, if I have enough time to do the things that I want to do, that I'm not too dependent on yeah, material things and
Mhm.
who is like what. And in a way, after some time, I think the most important thing is that you try to, in a way, work on yourself and try to see that some parts that might be hindering, like fear of something or being nervous of certain situations, that you try to put that away, that you just enjoy your life in a very relaxed way. And I feel that is my long-term goal, that I'm getting to that, to take every day as it is, even if it sounds, again, even if it sounds cheesy, but sometimes cheesy truths are also truths and can be very enjoyable.
Carpe diem. You enjoy life as it is.
Yeah.
No, I agree. No, honestly, that's I think that's one of the most aspiring things to for everyone to make your life enjoyable and to not to not feel your work as a work, but
Yeah. Yeah.
as a great, contribution
Yeah.
and just that's yeah, I love that that answer. I would say one last question that I had, and this is actually a last thing that my previous guest we talked about this, and we said that it could be interesting to every time I have a guest to be like,
Hmm.
what's the question for the next guest?
Okay.
And a question, and
Yeah.
we were talking about he's NGO founder, so
Yeah.
nothing alike, but very
Yeah.
interesting. And he was talking about what can we do as humans today so that we become better ancestors? And that's the question that I'm asking you.
I think that's a very interesting question, because basically it encompasses the whole of human existence, right? And the whole of how we as humans can be better than we are at the moment. And
Yeah.
you have so many. Let me think. Um, I think, of course, it has to do with what we leave behind. And
Hmm.
what we leave behind, I would say, that's not only the world that we leave behind, where we, of course, don't want the world to be a place where people don't like to live anymore. But I think maybe even more important is that what kind of culture do we leave behind? What kind of attitude towards life and towards other persons do we leave behind? Because that will be our legacy to our kids and to their kids. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, this is a podcast about memory, but just my personal impression is what
No,
I
of
just see
course.
is um, that the world in itself would profit from being a bit less polarized between fake dichotomies of A and B and just trying to see some kind of harmonious middle ways, which sounds very wishy-washy, but it is simply something, and unless you want to talk about specific cases, I just feel by working on on ourselves and on our attitude and to maybe be less aggressive ourselves and less envious towards other people, less greedy and whatever. We can try to improve ourselves, try to
Mm,
increase the happiness in our surroundings, and maybe lead a bit by example and hope that this attitude spreads and maybe then also spreads so much that our kids and grandchildren have something from it. Yeah.
agree. Let's work on ourselves. Do you have a question for the next speaker in mind?
Do you already know who that would be, or is it like very
I have
general?
an idea, but I prefer
Okay,
never to
okay.
tell because first of all,
Good.
plans change. Depends on the person. Sometimes
Okay,
I
sure,
think
sure.
somebody, and
Let
plus
me
I don't want
think.
you to base the
Yeah.
question on the next one.
hmm My question would be, what is the most valuable thing you have learned in your life?
Okay, that's very interesting. I will definitely ask it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It was
You're
very,
welcome.
very interesting to learn more about it
Yeah.
because I knew a little bit about this technique when I first encountered your TED Talk, and I started actually using it. I was walking around my house trying to remember different things. I was like, okay, I'm entering, and then there is this mirror, and then I leave my
Mhm.
shoes, and on my shoes I see this, and
Yeah.
that's how I learned a lot of things actually. So I
Nice.
started learning this.
Great.
But it's true that I didn't know a lot of things and with
Mhm.
Memory League and all of this. So thank you
Yep.
for all of these explanations.
It was my
Very clear.
pleasure.
Thank you for your time, of course.
Hey.
I will link everything in the podcast description.
hmm
So I will link your contact if people want to
hmm
contact you, your courses, the
hmm
Memory League also, and
hmm
the
The other
sites so
pages,
that
yeah.
yeah, the pages so that if
hmm
people are, willing to just try it or want to learn more about memory
hmm
games, then they can refer to you or to these pages.
Nice.
And yes, I would say just thank you for everything. That was very, very insightful.
I can really say thank you very much for this extremely interesting podcast, for these very inspiring questions about a diverse range of topics. And it was a pleasure for me to be here, and it really was a pleasure. So it was a very enjoyable time, and thank you very much for having me here.
Oh, thanks. This was Stab, the Student Start Lab, hosted by Sasha Levsky. Thank you, everyone, and take care.